you guys, we still have, including today, we still have 3 classes left. So this week we will do project control, and next week we will do project closeout, and then the last week we will spend in exam preparation. But as I said to the block group, with the exam preparation, if you don't send me questions, I will just send you home that evening, all right? Because you need to tell me what are the things that you are battling with that you would like me to revisit during the exam review, all right? So I've already, because I see the block class for the last time this coming Friday, and they've already started sending through questions for me that they want me to specifically address. So please, before the last class, it's on a Monday, so let's say by that Thursday, the Thursday before that, please send me through any specific questions via email that you would like me to revisit. You know, because at the moment, I've been asked by 2 students to relook at stakeholder classification. So that I will do with the block class. So, you know, anything specific. The other thing is also that in marking the charters, we're coming across things that we see that you don't understand. So that I will obviously also cover, just to make sure that everyone is covered. All right. Okay, so today I would like to talk, yes?
Can I just ask you about the assignments? We doing the project control today.
Yes.
It was due last week.
Yes, I extended.
Due for this week.
Okay, so I extended the due date on the project control until this week Thursday, and I will do the same for the closeout, because so that I can submit it next week Thursday. All right. Okay. Okay, yeah, sorry, I did, people that asked me, I did send an email back to say that I extended the due date. But unfortunately, I didn't get round to emailing everybody. Okay, and I don't want to do it on my tutor because then my boss sees that I'm extending its assignment dates and then he gets very upset. Okay, so yeah, I also have to do things so that I can keep on working here. All right, so let's talk about project control. So basically, at the end of this session, you need to be able to apply integrated change control principles to a project. So this is what you're going to do for your assignment. You're going to tell me how you're going to control your project from now until, or basically from when you submitted your project plan to when the project is actually executed on the 20th of July. All right. So that means any changes that happen from now until the 20th of July, you have to follow a formal process. And you have to tell me what that formal process is going to be. But we're going to talk about what the processes are, etc., etc. But I just want you to have in the back of your minds that you have to apply that to your career day store project. Okay, so basically, according to the PMBOK, we enter a phase, or we start a project over here. Then there's certain initiating processes, which we've discussed in detail, and that's basically where we do the project charter. All right. Then there is a planning process where detailed planning takes place, and the main deliverable of that is the project plan, which you've submitted. Then we have the executing process, and that is the part where the actual technical work of the project is done. So in terms of project management per se, there is very little that happens in the executing process, okay, because that is where you do what it says on the WBS that will be done, all right? But the main thing is that there is a monitoring and controlling process that happens. Now, from this diagram, you can see that monitoring and controlling doesn't just happen during executing. There is also monitoring and controlling during planning and during initiating. Why is that the case?
Because if there's changes you need to relook at it through the plan?
Okay, so because there could be changes. So there could be changes from what I said in my project charter and what I do in my detailed planning. Okay, so when I elicit my requirements, I prioritize my requirements and I then plan according to the prioritized requirements. But the more detail I go into in my planning, I might find that I cannot meet some of the requirements. And that's where monitoring and controlling is required, because I then formally have to control and I formally have to say what has changed, why has it changed, has the change been approved, etc., etc. Okay, guys, you can switch on the light in the back if you want to. I don't know if you can see there. All right, and then we have the closing processes, and the closing processes is what we're going to be talking about in next week's lecture. And then we exit the phase and end the project. But you can see that even during closing, there's monitoring and controlling that is happening. Okay. But the main part of monitoring and controlling is during the executing process. All right, so our technical review process that we follow in a project is we start out with our basic requirements. Okay, so remember when we were talking about requirements, does a project have requirements?
No.
No. What has requirements?
Stakeholders.
Okay, so we start out with our basic requirements. And remember, for our cell phone, we said that it should be able to send and receive calls, or make and receive calls. It should be able to send SMSs, and it must be able to switch on my coffee machine. Do you remember that? Okay. But so now, during that during the time when we set up the basic requirements, we also prioritize them. And unfortunately for me, we said that it's not that important that the cell phone switches on the coffee machine, so we're not going to implement that requirement. All right. Then we go to the functional design concept. All right. So this is a paper exercise where we start saying, okay, these are the different modules that we need in the cell phone. You know, we need a mechanical module, which is basically the cover and the keypad and all of that. And then inside it is a lot of, well, there's obviously a PC board that needs to be designed and needs to have a certain functionality. And then obviously there's software that's, you know, so during the functional design concept, we decide which function or which of the requirements are we going to meet with which functionalities that we are designing on paper. Right. So once we've done our functional design concept, we then have to do a preliminary review. And we have to say, does the concept fit the basic requirements? Okay, so you can see here we have to go back and we have to say, this is now what the design looks like on paper, and is it meeting the requirements that we've prioritized and we've said are the basic requirements that we need for this product or this project. Okay, so if we are building a house, we would have asked the owner, what do you want? And he would have said the minimum is 3 bathrooms, 4 bedrooms, a dining room, and a kitchen, and it would be nice to have a study. Right? And then in the functional design, we would then have the plans that show the client, okay, this is what the functional design looks like. And obviously he will look at it and he will say, yes, this meets my basic requirements. Okay, so it depends on the project how formal this is going to be, but that always happens, right? Because you always go back to the basic requirements. So then the next step is we then do our hardware and software detailed design. Okay, so previously we just said, okay, we need the following modules. There must be a PC board, there must be a keypad, there must be software. But we didn't design it in detail. So we haven't selected the components, laid out the PC board, selected the keypad, made a mold for the casing, etc., etc. Because that's what happens here during the hardware and software detailed design. Okay, and normally we build a prototype during the hardware and software detail design because it gives us the look and feel, and it's easier to show somebody a prototype than to just show them drawings and documents, etc., etc. So here we have a critical review, and here we say, does the detail design reflect the functional design? Okay, because remember that when we go from our functional design to our detailed design, we might forget something. We might forget some or other function which this cell phone is actually supposed to do. So we have to check to make sure, have we included all the functions, and of course that then pulls back again to our requirements. So can you see that everything flows down from the requirements? And each of these steps is basically to check whether we are still meeting the requirements. All right. Then we will have some tests of the hardware and software detail design, and you can see for that you obviously need a prototype because you need to test whether this project is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then you will manufacture your hardware and software. So this is your second prototype, and it will have the same look and feel as your final product. Okay? And so once you've manufactured it, you have a functional readiness review. And in the functional readiness review, you ask, do the manufactured items conform to the detailed design? Okay, so in the detailed design, I said that it will have a pink cover. So when I look at the manufactured hardware, does it have a pink cover? Okay, so that's now a simplistic example, but you understand what I'm getting at. So you have to make sure that what you've designed there is what actually gets manufactured. And believe me, in many environments, that is not the case. In many environments, what happens is when they go from detailed design to manufacture, they realize, oops, like for example, when you build a house, the architect has this brilliant plan of this stained glass window that's going to be above the front door of the house. And then when the builder comes and they have to implement this stained glass window, they realize that the building technique to do it cannot be done the way that the architect designed it. Okay? And then they have to make some plans to change it so that it actually can be implemented. Right, so there's often a disconnect between your detailed design and your manufactured hardware and software. So here we then have a functional readiness review to see, does it conform to the detailed design? If it doesn't conform, of course, either we can do a change control, or a change order, so we can say, let's change the detailed design so that the manufactured item, so that we go with what's in the manufactured item, or we change what's in the manufactured item so that it's the same as the detailed design. Okay, but it's all about keeping track of where we are. Then we do our final hardware and software. So this is now our final prototype, and here we do a product readiness. And here we ask, do the production documents conform to the design documents? Because you don't want to send something in for production if your design documents aren't correct. Because what's going to happen if we do that? Why will it be rejected? Okay, because it's wrong. Okay, so say on the design documents, for some other reason, this little button which is kind of an important button on my cell phone, because when I press it, it gives me the menu. For some other reason, that button is not clearly indicated on the drawings. So now the cell phone goes in for manufacture, and all of them are made without that little button. And that's a crucial button. How much is it going to cost me? Because I will have to go and rework every single cell phone that is made using that design.
It's called cost of poor quality.
Yes, it's called cost of poor quality. Good. Somebody paid attention in quality class as well. Right, but do you see that it's important that we make sure that our product is ready for production, and that our production documents, or the documents that we use to do production with, are the correct documents, and that everything ties back up to our basic requirements. Right, does this make sense? Okay, so as the project manager, you have a very definite role to play throughout the control process. I was actually very surprised. On Thursday night, my sister-in-law from America came for dinner. We haven't seen her for 10 years. And a guy came with her who's working in China. So I said to him, what do you do? So he said, no, I'm a project controller. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm teaching project control right now. So what do you do? And so basically, this is what he does. Okay, so his role is not to do the planning side of it, where you draw up the WBS and you do the estimates and set up the schedules and all of that. His role is to control all of that once the project is running. And he told me that they're busy upgrading a mine in Mongolia for $6.2 billion. So that's the amount of money that he has to control. Okay, so what he has to do is to guide the project to meet performance requirements, schedule due dates, and budgeted expenses. So remember, it's the project manager's responsibility to make sure that the project meets performance, schedule, and budget requirements. So remember those triple constraints that we've spoken about. To track the project performance versus the plan, because remember, we start with some or other plan, and we then make sure that we are making or progressing according to plan, and then to make corrective action. So either we make the project conform with the plan. So we said that on the 20th of June, we would have spent 6 million rand on this project, and 50% of the work is completed. So come 6th of June, we've spent 7 million rand on the project, and 40% of the work is completed. What can you tell me about that project? Okay, so it's over budget and? Sorry? And it's deviating from the plan because it's 40%, it's supposed to be 50% complete and it's only 40% complete. Okay,
and
so
stand a chance to be terminated like now, because then.
Yes, well, you can decide whether you want to throw good money after bad, or there might be good reasons why that happened. Okay, so you as the project manager, you have to track the performance versus the plan, and then you must make the project conform with the plan. So if you're in that state where you are behind on the percentage work complete and you over budget, well, that's not a very good state to be in. But normally there are things, or very often there are things that you can do, like doing tasks in parallel to pull them in. If you're already over budget, it's maybe difficult to get more resources on the project. But you know, it might also be that there was a specific difficulty that has now been overcome, and that means that the rest of the project can go faster. Okay, so the first prize is always to make the project conform with the plan. So you still bring it in on budget, on time, with the performance. But sometimes you need to make the plan conform to new realities or expectations. Yes?
Is it acceptable for a project to, say you've started a project that needs some technology to be incorporated within? Maybe by the time you were planning the project, there were no those systems introduced. Can you now say, I want my project to meet these new realities? I'll give you an example of a project, Medupi Power Station, which is done by ESCOM.
Yes.
When they started, they didn't introduce a lot of technology. And when they are busy with the project, they are being advised that the project is going to be technologically behind.
Yes.
So you have to incorporate
yes.
a lot of new technologies. What happens when that goes beyond the budget? Maybe it crosses with another 25% on top of 100% that was budgeted before. Would you still regard that as a good project?
Yes, because on any project we always have something that we call a change variation order or a contract variation order.
What's the limit?
There is no limit. It depends on the people that approve the budgets. So if the people in ESCOM that are on the change control board, and we'll get to change control boards now. So with any change in a project, you look at the impacts of the change, you look at what are the benefits of the change, and you look at what does it mean in terms of time, cost, schedule, integration, resources, the whole picture. That information then goes to the change control board, and on your change control board you normally have your client and your, so in ESCOM's case, it'll be the contractor who's busy doing the work, it'll be ESCOM, and there will be a senior person who can make financial decisions. And that board will then evaluate it and say, okay, we're going to spend 50 million more on this project, but it means that our power station will run for the next 30 years. Whereas if we keep with the design that we originally agreed on, it will only run for the next 10 years. And they will then make that trade-off. Okay, so that type of decision is not made by the project manager. It is made by the change control board. And normally the project manager is part of the change control board, but in some organizations it's even higher up. Okay, and so as a project manager, you must not make those decisions. You must make sure that the decisions go to the change control board, to the place where the decisions should be made. Okay, and that is where, when you manage technical guys, especially technical guys in the CSIR, I know because I did it for many years, where the irony comes in. Because those guys, or your normal technical guy working as an engineer, normally has signing powers for maybe 10,000 Rand. So that means that if they need to buy components or something, they can approve for 10,000 Rand, and after that, it has to go higher up in the organization. But one design decision that they make can have millions of rands of impact on your project. Okay? And that is the art of project management, is to keep your finger on the pulse and to know what the implication is when they make those design decisions. Okay. Okay, so we'll get to, Lufuna, we'll get to some of it in more detail. If I still haven't answered your question by the end, then please ask me and we'll talk about it further. Right. Okay, so this is basically just another view of that very first diagram that I showed you. So we have our conception, initiation, feasibility, proposal, preparation phase. We then go over to planning, where we define project definition, system definition, user and system requirements, all right? And then we go into the execution phase. And as you can see by the blue line, there is some control that happens across all of this. But the main control happens during the execution phase. And this is where we design the product build, fabrication, testing, implementation, training, acceptance test, installation, and termination. And then normally the products or the service of our projects gets handed over to operations. Okay, so your power station then becomes operational and runs for the next 30 years. Your homeowner moves into the house and occupies the house. Your consumer starts using the cell phone, all right? And this part is no longer part of our project. All right, and then here you have system maintenance and evaluation, system improvement, system termination. And of course, system maintenance and evaluation can be a project on its own. It normally is a project because you have resources, you plan how you're going to evaluate the system, you have a schedule according to which you're going to evaluate it, you have a deliverable, which is a report at the end of the day, etc., etc. Then if there's system improvement, again, that would be a project, and you would basically go through the whole project life cycle again. And if there's system termination, in certain projects, like for example, if you are decommissioning a power station, there is a definite system termination project, because you have to make sure that everything is safely gotten rid of, that the land is rehabilitated. If you think about a nuclear power station, that you safely get rid of the nuclear rods, you know, that type of thing. And if it's a Navy ship, then you strip all the essentials and you sink the ship. Okay, so that is a specific project. Right, now on our projects, we have internal and external control. So when we are the contractor or the performing organization, we have internal control over the project. But in Lefuno's case, Eskom is the client and another contractor is building the power station for them. So the contractor building the power station will have internal control, but Eskom will have external control. And they will audit the books and records, look at work, they will do work inspection, they will require periodic reports of cost, schedule and performance. There might be incentive contracts. You guys don't do project resources this semester, hey? Okay, so next semester we will talk about, next semester you're the lucky winners of me for project resources, and we will then talk about incentive contracts and the various contracts that one can put in place. And this is done by the customer's project manager. So when we are building this power station, Eskom will have a project manager and the contractor will have a project manager. And they have different functions, but they are both necessary, especially on a project of that scale. All right. So if we're doing a smaller internal project in the organization, there might only be one project manager, but that project manager still has to have the two hats of the internal and the external control. Okay, so the control process starts with the project plan. Now that we've spoken about for about what, 70% of the semester. So you can see that the project plan is very important. Then what happens is work gets authorized. So you don't normally take the whole WBS and say to your resources, okay, here's the WBS now, go into the wilderness and start working. Normally you take the WBS and you authorize a certain portion of the WBS to be done, and it's normally a formal process. So I will say to doctor, I need you to design the software of the cell phone for me. You have 500 hours to do it in. These are the specifications, these are the risks. I will sign it, he will sign it, oh, and it's due by this date. Okay, so that's formal authorization of the work. Then during the time that the work is being executed, the project manager will monitor the work. So I will ask doctor on a weekly basis, how is it going with that work package? You have 500 hours, how many hours have you spent on it? How many hours do you still need? Are you meeting the specifications? How much have you spent? So I'm finding out what the progress is, and then I will report to top management and to the client what is happening on this project. The other thing is I will analyze performance. So I will say he's busy with his 500 hours and 250 hours of time has already elapsed on the project. And when I ask him how many hours do you need, he tells me I need 100 hours. What does that mean? Okay, so the task has 500 hours, 250 have elapsed, and 100 hours are needed. Okay, so that means that it's going well. So when I analyze the performance, I see it's going well. So I say, well done, doctor, keep up the good work. All right? Do you foresee any problems in the future? Okay? Is this really true? Are you sure? Do you understand? So that's about analyzing the performance. So analyze the performance in terms of, are we meeting the specifications? Are we on budget? And are we on time? And is the customer still happy? And are the requirements still being met? And then once we've analyzed the performance and there is a problem, we need to take action. All right? Even if we are in this situation, why would I need to take action in this situation? What, Lefuna?
You don't need to take any action because the time that is required is still available.
Yes, okay, but now say that so we're going to finish the project in 350 hours instead of in 500 hours. Okay? Now the client is expecting us to finish in 500 hours. So the client is only ready to pay us at the end of 500 hours. Okay? But we want payment at the end of 350 hours. Okay, so I need to take action and I need to warn the client that we're going to finish earlier and can you pay us? Because otherwise it might make sense to take doctor off that project and rather put him on another project where I can get paid quicker. Do you understand? So there's always thought that has to go into it and decisions that have to be taken, and especially when you're working with a project or a organization with like Arms Corps, they have certain times at which they will pay you, and it doesn't matter if you finish the project 3 years in advance, you're going to wait 3 years for your money, and that doesn't make business sense. Okay, so one has to at least warn top management that we're going to finish earlier. And the other thing is, what happens after the 350 hours? Are we now going to just let doctor sit at his desk for 150 hours and not do anything? Probably not. Okay, we'll give him a holiday bonus. He's being nice, but yeah.
Just a clarity, Prof. Now, work authorization. Whose duty is that? Project manager or the sponsor? Okay,
it depends in what type of organization we are working. If it is a functional or a weak matrix, then it will normally be the functional manager. And if you go across to a more balanced, strong matrix and projectized, then it will be your project manager. Okay. Okay, so the work authorization is to authorize work and to close out work. So at the end of when the 350 hours are up, and if the task is completed, you will again sign it and say, yes, this work has been completed. No work begins without authorization. So as I said previously, you don't just stick the WBS up on the board and say, okay guys, now decide which task would you like to do. Right, everything is officially authorized, and all work ends with a formal closeout. So somebody has to sign it off, and you will have some other checklist or an acceptance test, or depending on what type of projects that you are busy with. If you think about building a house, once you've laid the foundations, the municipality will come out and they will tick it off and say, yes, you can continue. All right, so there's various mechanisms in various industries that you need to follow. Okay, so this was your question. So top management authorizes the project to begin. So this is your project sponsor or your executive team that says, okay, the project can now begin. Then the project manager authorizes the work via the work orders or the work authorizations. If you are in a functional type organization, it goes through the functional manager and the work package begins. Whereas if you are in a more projectized environment, so the project manager has authority over the resources, not really the work packages, but the resources, the project manager can ask the resources to begin on the work packages. And then remember, there are also some work packages that are contracted out to suppliers. Right. And all of these now have to be tracked, and information has to be gathered on exactly what's happening. Does that answer your question? Yeah. I even drew you a picture. Okay. So, in terms of monitoring and performance, your project plan specifies the methods and procedures for tracking and assessment. Right? And this is what you are going to write for me in this next assignment about project control. You're going to tell me what are the methods and procedures that you're going to use for tracking and assessment of your project. It defines the specific measures and metrics to be used, and you use terms like review, verify, assess. Monitoring includes status meetings and reviews and specified and they are specified in the communication plan. So your communication plan will say there will be weekly meetings where minutes will be kept, etc., etc. Now remember that your project might be more virtual in that you might not come together as a project team, but you should at least have a Skype call or send emails, or you understand, you have to keep this thing going, you have to keep your momentum, because otherwise you're not going to get the chocolate cake. Believe me, it's going to be a nice chocolate cake. See, that's where, remember we spoke about that there are incentives. The incentive for this project is the chocolate cake. Okay, so to monitor the performance, you use a variety of qualitative and quantitative measures. So invoices, that's pretty quantitative. This is done, pay me so much. Time cards, I've spent 250 hours on the, I'm confused myself now. 250 hours, I've spent 250 hours on the project. Okay. Managers and supervisors assess progress by observation, asking questions and reviewing reports. So that's more qualitative. And that is where, as a project manager, you need to learn to keep your finger on the pulse, to ask the right questions. Okay? Because if you ask the question, how many hours have you spent? Do you see that now implies that there's 150 hours left on the thing? But if I ask the question, how many hours have you spent and how many hours do you still need? I get a much better answer. Okay. Because very often, after 250 hours have elapsed, 250 hours will have been booked on the project. But what does that mean? Does it mean that we're actually done, or that we're actually on schedule? Or does it mean that we will need another 300 hours, which is going to mess with our plan? Okay, so it's about asking the right questions. Another way that we monitor performance is by achieving milestones. So remember, milestones is the completion of a whole lot of deliverables on the project. And so if we've completed that milestone, we know that we are at a certain point and hopefully on track. Test and demonstration results. So tests and demonstrations are there to show that we are meeting the specifications, and the specifications pull back to the requirements. Right, and so if we fail a certain part of the test, we know that we have to rework so that we can pass the test the next time. Design reviews, and we discussed, remember about 4 slides ago, we discussed all the detailed design reviews that we have. And these are meetings with managers and technical personnel to review progress. And then the other thing is we can also ask the opinions of outside experts. So, you know, in some fields, the technical work being done is so specialized that maybe 5 people in the world know what is going on in that work. And so you might need to get a technical expert from the outside to assess and to say, yes, there are still 300 hours needed. Okay. Oopsie. Okay, so do not only measure cost and time, which are measures of input. Okay, so I've spent 250 hours on the project. What does that mean? It could mean that I've booked 250 hours on the project, but meanwhile I've been surfing the internet. All right, so don't just look at that, but look at the output of each task and work package. So the output measures address the deliverables or the results for each work package. So if doctor says to me, I have completed 250 hours worth of work, I should be able to say to him, okay, show it to me. Show me what you have done. All right. And it might be, if I'm not a software expert, difficult for me to evaluate what he's done and say, yes, this is 250 hours of work. And that's where I can get an external expert to look at it and say, yes, this is 250 hours worth of work. All right. Okay, so there are various emphases that we have in project control. So we have to control scope change, we have to control quality, we have to control the schedule, and we have to control procurement. Right? So scope control is identify where changes have occurred, ensure the changes are necessary or beneficial. Okay, so Lefuno, your change in the technology is beneficial. So you probably will allow that if you have the budget to accommodate that. Contain or delimit the changes wherever possible. Okay, so change happens, and change isn't bad, we just need to control it. And we need to make sure that it's necessary and beneficial. And scope change control is also the implementation of changes. So once you've identified a change, you need to make sure that the change is then implemented. All right. So once the change has been formally approved by the change control board, it has to be implemented in the project. Okay, quality control is to manage the work to achieve the requirements and specifications. So remember, quality is that it meets the specification. To take preventative measures to eliminate errors and mistakes, to identify and eliminate sources of errors and mistakes. So that's where you take the technical guys outside and you shoot them because they are the... No, I'm joking. But very often that's what you feel like as a project manager. You just want to take them outside and shoot them because all that they keep on doing is they keep on introducing change, right? And so it includes technical performance measures, or TPM, which is just an acronym that is used in project management, but I hate acronyms. All right, then schedule control is to keep the project on schedule and minimize schedule overruns. You have to fight the tendency to multitask. Because multitasking is bad.
How else do you manage that?
Okay, so the whole theory. The whole theory is that if I have an activity, okay, so write overseas report, and that's what I'm currently busy with, all right, and I have planned after that I'm going to start marking charters, for example, okay, and now my boss comes to me and says, I know you're working on the overseas report, but I need you to start marking the charters earlier. All right? So now, instead of completing that, I break it off over here and I start marking charters. All right? And then when I'm done here, I continue and I write my overseas report. What does it do?
Makes it longer.
Why does it make it longer?
Because of the disconnect you have, because your beginning of the task is always takes the longest.
Okay, so once I stop over here, okay, I forget what did I actually do. So when I start up over here again, I have to go back and I have to figure out, okay, where was I? What did I actually do? What did I mean by this? Oh yes, what does the template say? You understand? Which I've already done. I've already done it here, and now I must do it here again.
You don't have the luxury of doing this.
No, you have to plan your work so that this doesn't happen as much as possible. And as a project manager, you must try and protect your people so that they do this as little as possible. Okay? So one way of doing it is to make your tasks as short as possible, because then the tendency to multitask is less, because then I start and finish something. All right? And the other thing is, when this thing is so very urgent, ask yourself, is it really so very urgent? Or can I allow the resource to finish what they're busy with and then start knowing that it's going to take longer? Because this should have been that long, but it's now going to be that long. Okay, and at the end of the day, we waste time. When I was at the CSR, I used to teach the project management, the advanced project management course. And in that course, what we do is, it's called a bead game. So go Google bead game. And what you do in the bead game is, it's actually a physical exercise that you do, but it has to be like a smaller group. But you put the people in groups and then they have beads. And then you say to them, okay, the first time you have to turn the beads over twice and then you move over to the next bead. The second time you turn all the beads over once and then you come back, all right? And so the one is multitasking and the other one isn't multitasking. And whenever we do that exercise, we always ask the people, what do you think? Is the time going to be shorter or longer? And like normally about half of the class will say the time is going to be shorter if we multitask. Right? And then you say to the other half, okay, by how much will the time be shorter? No, maybe, it'll be 90% of the time. what happens when you do the exercise and you actually time it, 50% is how much you waste by multitasking. Time and time again. So you must be careful. Multitasking doesn't mean multi-projecting. So you can work on multiple projects. Okay?
I was about to go back and say I don't want anymore.
So you can work on multiple projects, but it's about finishing what you are busy with before you move on to the next thing. Okay. Then schedule control is you must frequently report activity status and publicize the consequences of delays and the benefits of early finish. So in some incentive type contracts, there's also penalty clauses. So if we are late by a month, for each day that we are late, it's going to cost us 100,000 Rand. Those are pretty tough penalties. And if your team are aware of that, and that's going to influence their bonuses at the end of the day, they are more likely to try and keep to the time scales. Okay. So, and the benefits of early finish, Doctor, if you finish it in the 100 hours, then I will allow you a week to go and do some training on something that you're interested in.
That's nice.
Yes. But so there's a benefit for you to finish early.
Yeah, but I'm sure the best to be like to discuss that before anything happens.
Yes.
So that we get a sense of purpose in doing something.
Yes.
To surprise me, or maybe I would have finished that I was relaxing. And
yeah, but you see, and this is now a bit off the topic, but project managers, on the whole, we do not have the authority to reward people. So we cannot necessarily give people bonuses, give them money, give them higher salaries. But there are things that we can do. We can say, Doctor, you did so well on this software project that on the next project I know that you want to develop this skill. So I am going to give you that work assignment to work on. All right. So at the beginning I said to you, if you can do this and you can pull it in quicker, then the next project I'm going to let you do this. Okay? Or I'll pay for you for training. Or the other thing is just keep saying thank you. Hey, you're doing a good job. Do you understand? So there are things that project managers can do to reward people, but you just have to be a little bit more creative than somebody who actually can have monetary incentive. Okay, then procurement control. Monitor the quality, schedule and cost of all procured items. So this means that you need to go to the supplier's premises and you have to make sure that what they are telling you is actually true. So visit and inspect the facilities of subcontractors and suppliers. Track subcontractors and suppliers' progress and expenses. Because if they tell you that they are 50% complete, but they've only spent 25% of the money, then you know there's a problem. And that's where earned value comes in, which you will learn about in project accounting next semester. Those of you that are doing it in 1 year. Okay. Then prepare contingency for all major procured material, equipment, components and services. So if there is something which is critical for your project, make sure that you have another supplier lined up so that if the one supplier drops you, you can fall back on another supplier. Okay, so this is basically just tracking of issues, and you can see that this is issues that are six months old, and here are the recent issues, and your project is in trouble if you have a lot of issues that are outstanding, that are very old, and if you have a lot of issues. Okay. So you always have a issue register where you log what are the issues that are coming up, who is responsible to solve them, and by when. Okay, this is your issue log. Okay, so now we get to the wonderful topic of change. So change is any deviation in the project plan So it happens de facto or by discretion. So de facto is when it happens and you as the project manager only realize afterwards that it's happened. All right? Or by discretion is where they tell you that the technology will be redundant, and so you better make a decision on whether you're going to change or not. And the thing about change is it tends to increase the project cost and schedule. And it's the role of the project manager to control changes and not to let changes control the project. Has anybody heard the term scope creep? Okay, so good project managers do not have scope creep. But normally it's like scope run, not creep. Okay, so reasons for changes in projects. So incomplete requirements. So if I start out and I don't understand what the stakeholders want, the unknowns or omissions in the original plan or requirements. And so now if I want to actually deliver what the client wants, I have to make changes. The user changes their mind. Because of changing conditions or needs, the original requirements are no longer what the user wants. Okay, and this is where the little animal called the CVO comes in. Contract variation order. Because if the user changes their mind and all the specifications and requirements were in writing and you can quantify the impact of that change, you can make them pay. So that's lovely, isn't it? Okay, then another reason could be insurmountable obstacles. So unavoidable difficulties render the original plan difficult or impossible to follow. The original requirements are difficult or impossible to achieve. So then you have to say, all right, we can give you a cell phone that can make calls and receive calls, but it cannot switch on the coffee machine. All right, because that's just impossible to do. Okay, then the other reason for change, and this is where you take the technical guys outside and shoot them, is user or designer perceives desirable improvements in the original plan or requirements. So they're pursuing perfection. Okay, and technical guys always, in my experience, pursue perfection. They want a perfect project using the latest technology with the best bells and whistles available. All right? And you as the project manager have to manage them that they meet requirements, because that's all that you need. And every bell and whistle that you add adds cost and time and risk. Okay. And that's a very difficult one. Okay, and another reason for change could be opportunities. The user or the designer sees benefits not recognized or unavailable when plans or requirements were first established. So Lefuno, your change is probably an opportunity, because you can go with the old technology, but that means that your power station is going to become redundant a lot sooner. Whereas if you can change now, there's the opportunity of having a longer time span for your power station. Okay, so uncontrolled change leads to scope creep. The effects of the change on the project must be assessed. So if a de facto change happens, so a change that the project manager wasn't aware of, the minute you become aware of it, you must reflect it in the revised work plan, schedules and budgets. And if there are requested or discretionary changes, you must assess them before the changes are approved or denied. Okay? And this is now where the changes have to go through the control board where they are approved or denied. Okay, so this is, unfortunately, it's very small for those of you in the back, but this one says original contract, the small little dinky over here, and then the big boat says change order. Okay, has anybody ever worked on a project like this? I've worked on many projects like this. Okay, so here is the shuttle system design evolution from 1972 to 1974. So this is over a period of 2 years. And if you just look at the pictures, can you see that it changed quite a lot? It changed to be bigger, and it had a funny little nose thingy and whatever, and then the original one is actually more similar to the first one, you see. And this is where the technical guys started building in bells and whistles, and then they realized that it's impossible to achieve, so they went back. Right. Okay, so all that stuff, as designs evolve, things are constantly changed. When things keep changing, how do you keep track of the changes and their impacts on everything else? And that is the importance of having a good change control system. If you think of a motor car, just the engine of it has more than 1,000 components. And if one little screw changes, what is the impact on the rest of the engine? It might be major, because it might be that another component now doesn't fit, and then the next component doesn't fit, and do you understand what I'm saying? And that's why even a small change one has to keep track of, and you need to look at what is the impact on the rest of the system. And this is where change control systems and configuration management comes into it. So the project plan should include policies and procedures for change control and configuration management. These policies and procedures are communicated to customers, contractors, suppliers, and everyone in the core project team. So part of this is also to educate your customer. Because if your customer doesn't realize the impacts of all these little nice to have changes that they're making all the time, and at the end of the day you're going to end up with a huge problem, because you're going to overrun your schedule, you're going to overrun your budget, and you're not going to meet your original requirements. Okay, so change, so remember there are two words there, change control system and configuration management. And those are two different animals. So your change control is, the functions of it is to continuously identify changes as they occur, to reveal the consequences of changes. So the impacts on other tasks, project costs and duration, other parts of the system, so all the impacts down the line. I know that when I was working at LIW, the change control system, everybody complained about it because it was very painful. Because in those days, everything wasn't computerized like today. And so you would physically get a document on your desk. So I was the documentation, the manager of the documentation section, the project manager of the documentation section. So if they made a change on the Roy cuts and they moved the fire button 3 inches to the left, okay, they had to put in a change control order. A change control order. Then everybody that could be impacted by the change had to sign off on it. So I, as the documentation manager, had to look at what is the impact on the manuals and on the user and the maintenance manuals that we were writing. Okay, and so now if they've moved it 3 inches, it means that on the drawing it has to move 3 inches. Those days we still drew by hand, so it wasn't computerized. So if they have to redraw that drawing, it's a day's work. So it's 8 hours, so it's a lot of money. So do you understand the process? And exactly the same, the logistics people also had to look at the impact. The production people had to look at the impact. The whole chain of the organization, anybody who could possibly be impacted by the change had to look at the impact. They had to sign off on it and say 8 hours extra or whatever, and it's going to take 3 weeks longer or whatever. And then that document, which was now signed by everybody, would go to the change control board, and the change control board would then look at the impact in terms of cost and schedule, and they would then say, yes, you can move the switch by 3 inches or not. Okay, and it doesn't sound like such a big change, but it has a big impact. Okay, so the other thing is you must also analyze alternative courses of action and make acceptance or rejection decisions. And the bottom line is that we want to minimize change, because change always costs money. Then once the change has been approved, you have to communicate it to everybody concerned. Okay, so I have a personal story about not communicating change to everybody concerned, which will illustrate to you how important it is to communicate change. A few weeks ago, on a Monday, in the past, I always had a maid that came in 5 times a week. So this year, my maid only comes in 3 times a week because she has 2 small children that she has to take care of. So we now had to change the schedule of the household, and there's more work that my husband and my son and I now do because she only comes in 3 days a week. Anyway, and in the past, when she was there 5 days a week, she always used to do the bedding on a Wednesday. But because she was there Tuesday and Thursday as well, she washed clothes on Tuesday and Thursday, so we had enough clothes. So now, on the 3 days a week, she was also only washing bedding on a Wednesday. So a few weeks ago, I said to her on the Monday, listen, Andronica, this is not working because we don't have enough clothes. So we run out of clothes by Thursday, so you have to wash clothes as well on Thursday. So now on a Wednesday, please do our bedding, and then on a Friday do my son's bedding, you see, but then also wash clothes. Okay, so she and I were happy and the change was agreed. Then the first Wednesday I come home and my maid is almost in tears and what's happening? No, she had to use the tumble dryer because she was doing more washing than what she normally does on a Wednesday now because she was also washing clothes. And then my husband got upset because she's using the tumble dryer and that costs electricity. And the sun was shining outside, so why is she using the tumble dryer? Anyway, so the bottom line was that I hadn't communicated to my husband that there would be a change in the schedule of washing laundry, which meant that on a Wednesday she would have more laundry to wash, which meant that she couldn't finish her job if she didn't use the tumble dryer. Okay? So the minute I explained that to him, everybody was happy and the problem went away. Okay? But that's what happens when you don't communicate changes. All right, now on a project, you can think that if I'm busy designing and I'm busy drawing, so I'm documenting what the interior of this vehicle looks like, and the switch is over here, and you now move the switch by 3 inches. When the client comes and they verify my manual against the actual hardware, they're going to pick up that there's a problem. If nobody has communicated to me that that change in 3 inches of the switch has been approved. Okay. Okay, and then, so communicate the changes and then ensure that they are implemented. Because you could have told me that the switch has moved, but as the project manager, you must check that my document has now moved the switch. And then report summaries of all changes and their impact on the project. So this is also part of the CYA principle. Does everybody know what CYA means? It means cover your ass. So in other words, when the client asks changes, you document them so that when you have to do a CVO, a contract variation order, to make the client pay for those changes, it's been documented that the client signed off on it. Okay. Okay, so this is the change control process. So a change is generated. So it's either a de facto change, and a de facto change is one that just happens and you want to minimize those, or it's a discretionary change. So this is one where you can decide whether to allow the change or not. So you document the change proposal or request. If it's a major change, so in organizations, they will say a major change means a month on the schedule and less or more than 1 million rand, or you know, whatever the limits are in your organization. So if it's a minor change, there's a review committee or an individual can take the decision. If it's a major change, it goes to the change control board. It has to be formally reviewed. So whether it's a review committee or whether it's the change control board, it still has to be formal. And what does formal mean? documented in writing. Okay, so then there's three things that can happen to a change. The first thing is that it's undecided. So the committee or the change control board looks at the change and says, we cannot decide because there isn't enough information, right? So in that case, it has to go back to the documentation process. The committee can decide to approve the change. Then you have to update the system configuration and the project plan. And you have to implement the change, you have to monitor the change, and you have to notify the customer and the other affected stakeholders, right? And you can see the same thing happens with a de facto change. Because remember, a de facto change is a change that's already happened. But you still have to document it. And the other thing that can happen with a change, it can be denied. Right. Now, remember that your change control board is not this mythical bunch of unicorns that sit in a magic circle to make the decisions. It's made up of people that are involved in the project and that can make financial decisions. So normally you would have somebody from the customer there, you would have your internal people there, you would have your functional managers very often there, so that the whole ambit of the change can be discussed. Right. Okay, so change control procedures require that the original work requirements and work orders are clearly stated and agreed upon by the persons responsible. Because if I have a fuzzy work authorization, then I can do whatever I want to, and if you tell me but you've made a change, I can say no, but it was open for interpretation. Okay, so you can see that your original planning here is very important. Closely monitor work to ensure it is meeting, not exceeding specifications. Remember, we don't want gold plating, because gold plating increases cost, increases schedule, increases risk. Be alert for signs of cost or schedule overruns and take quick action to correct problems. Then there's another term that we use, and that is the freeze date. So at a predefined phase, you freeze the project against all non-essential changes. And the freeze point must be agreed to by management. So normally, do you remember that very first slide where I spoke about the different review processes that we have? So normally at the end of each of those review processes, we freeze the project, okay? And any changes that happen after that freeze date has to go through a formal change control procedure. And the sooner the project can be frozen, the less changes will adversely affect project schedule and cost. Okay, so in an ideal world, we want to freeze the project on day one. Unfortunately, in real life, it doesn't work like that. Okay. So this is the Apollo spacecraft. During peak design period, there were 1,000 change orders per week. I'm glad I wasn't the project manager. But on that project, there was obviously several project managers. Okay, like this chap that I was talking with on Thursday night, who is a project controller. He tells me he has a whole team that works with him. So it's not him by himself controlling the 6.2 billion project. He has other people that look at various parts of the project and report to him on the changes that are happening in the status, etc., etc. And obviously on something the order of magnitude of an Apollo spacecraft, you would also have a whole team that would control that. Okay, and that basically, guys, is project control. Do you have any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
What do you want to see on the assignment?
What I want to see on the assignment is the methods and procedures for tracking and assessment of your project. So you've handed in your project plan. So let's assume that your project is now frozen. So if things now change, how are you going to manage that change? How are you going to decide that changes like that are acceptable? How are you going to track the performance of your project? Because, I mean, it's not going to be that you've now handed in your project plan and magically on the 20th of July, there's going to be a storm. People are going to have to do things in between. So how are you going to track those things and make sure that everybody is doing what they should be doing? And how often are you going to communicate with each other? How are you going to communicate with each other? What are you going to communicate with each other? Does that answer your question? Yes. You have to go and think. And next semester when we do group projects, I've now learned new tools and techniques to torture you with. So at the moment, on the group sheets, you indicate what percentage everybody has contributed. And to a large extent at this stage, I pretty much ignore that. Next semester, you're going to indicate that, and I'm not going to ignore that. And everybody is going to sign. So if there are 4 people in the team, so there are four people in the group, and you say this guy did 20, 20, 20, 40. Okay? Then everybody is going to sign off on that. Okay? To agree that's what everybody did. And then we will have some other formula according to which we will then allocate the marks. And if there is a dispute, you have to prove to me why this is wrong. Okay, so that means
how will you see the dispute if you are not selling each other out?
No. There will be no selling out of each other. Because if you have been contributing, there will be emails, there will be documents that you have generated, that you have added to the mix. So you will, in essence, keep your own portfolio of evidence to show that you have been participating. Okay. So that's my new torture for next semester. Because the thing is that my boss doesn't like group assignments, because he says that when you do group assignments, one person in the group always does the assignment. All right? And I would like to make the group assignments carry higher weight, because I think that the group assignments add a lot more to your learning, and you put a lot of effort into the group assignments. So I would like it to carry more weight. So I need to put in place things to prove that everybody is actually contributing. Okay. The other thing which I can just quickly maybe, since we have like a few minutes left, let's continue the recording. Okay, who of you are thinking of registering as PMPs, project management professionals? Okay, so there are a few of you. Sorry, I must just find the right spreadsheet. Next semester in PJPB, I will get somebody from the Project Management Institute to come and talk to you, just to explain to you, you know, what are the benefits and what is the Project Management Institute and stuff like that. But what I just wanted to show all of you is what you can already start doing. And I will put this spreadsheet on my tutor, is you can start populating this spreadsheet, okay? Because in order to register with PMI, okay, so how it works is you become a member of PMI. If you're a member of PMI, there's certain benefits. You get to go to conferences cheaper, etc., etc. And that doesn't really mean much. Then you can become a project management professional. And that is where you write a multiple choice exam with 200 questions over a period of 4 hours. And my feeling is that once you've completed the BTEC in project management, you will have learned everything that you need to pass the exam. But there is further preparation that you have to do, because we do something that's more generic, and the PMP exam is PMI specific. All right. So I always say you live on planet PMI for the time that you prepare for the exam. So in real life, we have grays, and we have things like scope creep, and we have fights with our clients and so on. On planet PMI, we don't have those things. Okay, so it's a different paradigm. But anyway, to make a long story short, in order to register or to be allowed to write the PMP exam, one of the things is that you need to show that you have at least 3 years experience in project management. So that would be applicable for all of you once you've got your BTEC. So once you've got a bachelor's, it's 3 years experience. So that is 3,600 or something hours. I forget now the exact hours, but anyway, it's 3 years. So what you should start doing right now is you should start capturing the work that you are doing on projects, okay? Because you need to prove that the work that you've done in the last 3 years, right? And this spreadsheet helps you because it has all the detail that you need for each project, because this is the level of detail when you go and register on the PMI website. This is the level of detail that they ask you. Okay, so they want to know, when did the project start, what's the project number, the project name, what's the industry, what was your role, etc., etc. Okay, so if you start populating the spreadsheet already, and even put in projects that you've already done, then by the time you get to the point that you actually want to become PMI certified, you have all the information. Okay, and even if you don't become PMI certified, this is a very valuable tool for your CV. Okay, because I sit and I think, I wish I'd done these things when I was young. Because, like, for example, myself, I've got 21 years of experience as an engineer and project manager, but I'm not registered with EXA, because I didn't, after 3 years, register with EXA, and to now register after 20 years as a professional, professional engineer, is going to take me about 3 months to just fill in the paperwork. Okay, and I have to go back and have seances with some people that have to sign off because they've died already, and you know what I'm saying. So take advice from an old lady like me, and start now to keep book of all the work that you are doing on projects. And so how it works is here on the left, you fill in the details of the project, and here on the right, you then fill in how many hours you worked on the different activities in the initiating process, in the planning process, etc., etc. And even if you're not going to become a PMP, it's very helpful, because when you write your CV, you forget sometimes, what did I do on that project? And, I can't remember the first 3 years when I was working at IST, and also the time that I was at LIW, which is also many millions of years ago. I can't remember exactly everything that I did, right? And so now when I update my CV, I always read through that bit and then I add something, because I remember, oh, okay, I've added, I actually did this as well. So take my advice and fill this in. I will put it on my tutor for you, and then you can use it as a tool. Oh, and then also over here, sorry, there is a place here at the bottom. Sorry?
We always cook CVs.
No, no, no. It's it's fine. It's fine to cook your CV if you're brave enough. But remember, if you don't deliver, then you're going to be in trouble. And with the PMP exam, you can be audited, right? So they can come and actually audit in your organization whether what you said there is true. Okay, and this is where this comes in handy. So whenever you've done a project and you've put all the hours that you've worked, then you get your boss or your directs, the person that you report to sign it off over here. Okay, and that's also a valuable tool later on for your CV, because then you remember also who the people were that you worked with. Okay. So listen to an old lady who is in deep trouble because she's not a professional engineer. So, and do this for yourself. Okay.
On a lighter note, Prof, before we leave, is there a specific reason why they were not scheduling in the last test?
There was not?
No can't no. The last test you wrote.
Because I like to mix things up.
Okay. Nice.